Okay, boys and girls, I walk this trail every day with my missus, and I've been salivating, I was going to say salivating over doing some HDR photography on this bridge coming up here. So we'll take a look in a second. I think you'll see it's kind of interesting. Bit of a landmark in the small town where I live. But yeah, I'm going to show you how to take a basic, picture that would be sort of ho-hum and turn it into something that you want to hang onto your wall. Or hang on your wall. Apologies for the lawnmowers. It's a beautiful day. Humidity's pretty high today, so it's just one of those nice summer/fall days. Leaves haven't started changing color yet. But if you can see in the distance there, the guy on the lawnmower, I walk past that house on a regular basis. I always look from there over here and thought this bridge would be a pretty awesome subject for an HDR photo. And so that's basically what this video is going to be all about. I'll show you how to do that. We're going to go over and take a look and give you the perspective from over there. Actually, between the two yellow houses there is the picture that I'll show you. And then I'm going to show you my workflow for taking this bridge picture from ho-hum into something pretty cool. So this is the other side of the bridge, just shooting in the opposite direction. But it's got some potential for a decent HDR shot as well. Okay, just as I pulled up between the two homes here, you can see the bridge in the background. This nice little old lady that lives there, she came out, and so I blurred her out. I don't want to offend her or invade her privacy, if you will. But if you can see there, that's the angle of the bridge that I want. The problem is I need to get into her backyard to shoot to get a really decent shot, and she was nice enough to let me do that. And actually, I've spoken to the neighbor on the right side of her, and they've given me permission as well. So you just have to be respectful with people and mindful of their privacy. And most of the time, they'll let you go and take some photos, and then you can be on your way and do what you need to do with them. Okay, here's the final image that I was able to create, and this is where we started from. So if you look in this image here, you can see there's a lot of hydro wires that I had to get rid of. A little bit of retouching, and the sky is nowhere near as dramatic as what you see in this image. And so this is the beauty of HDR. HDR can take a really dull, overcast day. It can pull out, it almost looks like there's mist in the background here, just along the railings of the bridge. And then with a little bit of Photoshop work, you can really pull up the old timbers in the bridge. You can highlight the bulrushes in the foreground, and you end up with an image that's worthy of hanging on your walls. I mean, and so what we're going to do next is I'm going to show you my workflow start to finish and how we capture an image like this and turn it into finished HDR that you'll want to hang on your wall. So let's get to it. Okay, so this is our start. I'm in Capture One, and that's my program of choice. And so these are the 5 images that I've selected to do my HDR with. And if you're looking down the bottom here, you can see this is 2 under, 1 underexposed, perfect exposure, 1 over, 2 over. And so this is where it all starts. If you come over to the right hand side here, you can see 6000 by 4000. I'm shooting in RAW. I'm using a Tamron 70 to 180 millimeter 2.8. And if you look down here at the exposure ratings, you can see 100, ISO is 100, shutter speed is 50th of a second for this particular image, and the aperture is 4.5. So here's a pro tip. If you're going to do bracketing, which is the way I shoot for HDR, make sure that when you set your camera, you're in manual mode, because if you're in programmed automatic mode, then what happens is the camera is automatically going to vary the aperture to give you the variation between the images, and that'll change your depth of field and cause you problems when you take your images into a program like Photomatix. But this is where it all starts. And so then the next step, which is important, is we're going to export these images. I've already done it, but I'm going to go through the motions here with you anyways. So let's say we're dumping it into images, And then here's the important part here. In HDR, or to capture as much detail, you want to use the format that's uncompressed. And so I use TIFF, and I also select 16-bit, so it's uncompressed. The other thing I do, because I know I'm going to be printing these images, is I select Adobe RGB in 1998, and then I'm going to bump this to 100. And so like I said, I've already done this, but I'm just showing you the settings that I use. So now you know. This step here is using TIFF and 16-bit as opposed to 8 is going to give you the greatest amount of detail in your images, and then you simply click Export, and we'll go from there. Okay, so here we are in Photomatix. I'm using Photomatix Pro 6.2. It's the 64-bit version. I'm working on a PC i7-8700K machine, and now I'm going to click Browse, and I'm going to come over here to let's come to Libraries, Videos, 2021, HDR Workflow, and 5 images. So there's my 5 images, like so. I'm going to open them up. Takes a second because these images are fair size, and now you can clearly see the variations in the shutter speed. Okay, and that's what helps to give you the best of the darks, the best of the midtones, and the best of the highlights. So that's really important. So next we're going to choose merge options, and these settings are pretty much standard. I don't need to change them. I'm always on a tripod, and simply come down here and align and merge to HDR. So the first image you see, I can tell just by looking at this that this is the creative setting. And what that is you'll notice here, so in Photomatix you have a ton of options for HDR. And if you click on these, there's a basic detailed photo, and we can just run through them so you can see the different variations that Photomatix offers you. And so it's really up to you to determine what you like. And so one that I use quite often is this one down here, Creative. This is probably the most dramatic, high contrast that you can get. So this isn't the one that I showed you in the previous picture, but this is definitely one that has a very dramatic effect. Now, the other thing you need to keep in mind with Photomatix is that there's a setting down here called blending. So you don't necessarily need to use the full effects of Photomatix. As I move the slider to the right, it pulls the HDR effect off. So you can really tailor it to your artistic vision of what you want to pull out of an image, right? And so there we are, back to the full dramatic effect. And there's other controls here, and basically what you're doing here when you hit this slider here is you're selecting a number of different options for what it's going to look like over here. And so it's just as easy to come over here and click on one of these, and boom, you can see right away. So there's lots of adjustment in Photomatix, but let's go just for argument's sake here, and black and white as well. Okay, so there's a huge range. I'm going to click back on Creative. I'm going to select Finish. Okay, I'm going to say Done, and I'm going to save this. Do you want to save your images made? You'll see that it shows you've got 64, 5, 6, 7, 8, Creative, yes. And we're going to save them in the same place that the 5 original images were saved to. And then you need to select your output. So if you're going to print, I would select TIFF 16-bit, click Save. Okay, and it's opened it up for me in Photoshop. And so this is what you get. And so now basically you have to do a little bit of work getting rid of the hydro lines. One by one. You can use the clone tool to do that, and then you can do things like, here, let's just I would typically come over and do a little bit of dodge and burn. I've got the midtone selected, 9%, that's great. And just drop this down a little bit. I also use a Wacom tablet and pen for this, but you can come in here and just really add a bit of contrast in here. So it draws out the main timbers in the bridge. And then you can, you know, accentuate some of these features along here, the railing of the bridge, like that. Just do a little bit of, and all these changes, as long as you keep your dodge set to 9%, they're very subtle adjustments, right? So you're not really going to do any damage that can't be reversed. And so once you remove the wires, you're going to have an image that you're going to want to hang on your wall. Now, some people might say, oh, geez, why don't you zoom in here? You know, I could have taken out these, cloned out these little stamp marks here, but I mean, to me, that's part of it. You know, it's just part of the image. It adds to the effect that I was looking for, my particular artistic perspective, and so that is my example for you as to how you can create, how you can take a ho-hum image and turn it into something really cool. So here's another example of a fabrication shop that I turned into an HDR image. And this is a great example of what I just showed you. I use the exact same workflow pretty much. And so this is what we started with, and this is what I ended up with. And so you can see like what a dramatic difference it makes using HDR. Now the only difference here is that I had to shoot the individual separately. You know, so I just approached the guy. I'd walked by his shop. I thought it was really cool. He had a really eclectic setup and everything, and gave me permission to come over and do a shoot. Took about an hour and a half with him. And yeah, this is what I was able to achieve using Photomatix and the exact same workflow that I just showed you. Okay guys, that's going to wrap it up for this one. The secret's out of the bag. You've seen my workflow now. Now it's up to you. Now, just because I'm working in Capture One and Photomatix doesn't mean that you have to as well. I mean, you can do HDR in Photoshop itself. There's probably a dozen different programs that will allow you to do HDR style photography. I simply wanted to show you the workflow that I use. Photomatix is a great program. You've got so many choices and so much variation that you can part into your images to get the artistic effect that you want. So I'll leave the decision up to you as to how you're going to go about it. And if you have questions, you know, connect in and shoot me a line. I'm happy to help out. And take care of yourselves, okay? And watch out for COVID. It's not a joke. Get yourself vaccinated. The sooner we're all vaccinated, the sooner we get back to normal. So we'll see you next time.